And we showed you how simple it is just to hook up and begin operating your first 4 switch machines with your PIKO switch decoders, and moving on from there, if you have more switches than that, for your second switch decoder, maybe switches number 5 through 8, and going on from there you follow the same procedure. We're going to show you that, and it's pretty simple just to follow these programming steps and get it all set up and operating. So for programming of your switch decoder, you want to make sure that any of your locomotives or anything else that's got a decoder in it is off the tracks, and just your switch decoder that you want to program. And we're going to use a very high-tech little device not provided by PIKO. We took a little paper clip and cut off half of it to make it a little wired jumper, and we're going to insert that into those 2 programming terminals, the first pair of terminals. It literally is a cut-off paper clip, and that works great for a little jumper. That tells the system that this is the decoder to be programmed, and it can't be programmed unless that little jumper or bridge is in place. So your other switch decoders, if you have more than one, are safe. And this one will only be this one that's programmed. Here's an example where the instruction book may actually be handy. We do put those with the product, and sometimes they're actually useful. So this has a little section here about programming, and it's going to tell you the steps, and it walks you through pretty simply. The first time you may just have to take your time and read through it carefully. Once we have our little programming bridge, our paper clip in place on the proper pair of terminals, the first 2 terminals, we're going to look in our little chart here, and it explains that each one of these pairs of terminals has a different CV number. We've talked before about CVs, configuration variables on locomotives. Those are different places where you can program different information, and each switch machine, the outputs for that switch machine, has a different CV number, and on the PIKO switch decoder they are 32, 34, 36, and 38 for the 4 switches. And into those CVs, into that pair of terminals, we're going to put a new number. They come from the factory as switch CV number 32 is for switch output number 1, and we're going to change that for our second switch decoder, say, to 5. So we could have 5, 6, 7, 8. And a neat thing of the PIKO switch decoder is if you want to have switch number 5 on this decoder and switch number 200 on this switch decoder, they can be right next to each other. It's just a matter of programming in a different number. So it's very simple, and we'll look at our little chart here, and for the first 255 switches, it's very simple, one-step process. And for higher numbers than that, if you have more switches than that, great. That's a big layout. It's a little more complex, but just read the next page of the instructions and it walks you through that. We're just going to do the basic because that's good for most folks. So very similar to how we approached programming the address or changing anything on a locomotive decoder, we're going to go on our Navigator Remote into our menu, and we press the M3 or menu key, and that brings up our menu of all kinds of things that we can choose. And the second one down there, so we'll use the M1 button to scroll down, and that's decoder programming, and we'll use M2, which has a little OK above it, to click OK. We don't want to program a local address. We're going to keep scrolling down to CV programming, and that's what we want to do. So we'll click OK. And as we mentioned, that first switch machine output pair of terminals is 32. So we're going to enter always the number in a 3-digit format. So we enter 0, 3, 2, and we click OK. And then it's going to prompt us to enter a value. And we said we want to change this one to switch number 5, because it's our second switch decoder, we'll say. So we're going to enter again 3 digits, so 0, 0, 5, and then we're going to click OK. And our switch machine actually made a little click and through. That indicates that we actually programmed successfully. Now we're operating switch number 5. That originally was number 1. We've changed it to 5, and we're throwing it back and forth. So that can be any number that we want, up to 255 very easily, and up to over 1,000 with just one more step. That's how to program switches, and after we're done, we'll put the lid back on. We'll remove our programming jumper first and put the lid back on, seal that up, put it under a little building, and it's ready to operate on our garden railway.